Hi YouTube, it's Kathy and this is my weekly entertainment wrap-up for August 6th through 12th. This week I read 3 books, I watched 2 shows, I watched 1 movie, and I listened to 2 books. First this week we have American Detox. This is a book all about the wellness industry and how it is very focused on us fixing our own individual problems and how really we should be looking at societal issues and maybe fixing those instead of looking internally, because there's a lot going on if you haven't noticed. At the beginning of this book I was very jazzed to find out about more things that I needed to know about, that I needed to have some way of fixing, and to have this book tell me ways that I could work towards that. Mostly this book told me things I already knew about systems I already knew were broken and that didn't really give me much in the way of how to fix it. And that's understandable because every community is different, so you can't just give a blanket statement of do this thing and it will help your community, because your community has different needs. This book is definitely worth reading for its commentary on the wellness industry and how we've taken on so much of this is my fault, everything is my fault, I need to fix myself before I can look outside of myself, because obviously it's a billion-dollar industry that really messes with people and completely diverts their attention. This also had some anecdotes and some information that I didn't know ahead of time, so I'm not saying that I knew everything in this book ahead of time, but I felt like I knew about many of the issues that were brought up in this book and they were just expounded upon, which is good. Next this week I read a graphic novel, and that's The Princess and the Grilled Cheese Sandwich. This is about a woman whose father is about to die and she does not want to get married, and he's like, well, if you don't want to get married, and I know you don't want to get married because you don't like men, and that's totally fine with me, but the inheritance laws are really bad, so like, do you want to pretend to be my son instead of my daughter so you can actually inherit? And she's like, yes, I will do that. So he dies, she moves away, pretends to be a son instead of a daughter, and is really bored and is just living in this house with the one caretaker who knows about her identity, and decides to actually go out in public and meet this princess she's always wanted to meet. They strike up a wonderful friendship, however she has quite the crush on the princess, which is obviously gonna cause some issues. This was absolutely adorable, and knowing the backstory about why this is written, because the artist actually has a wife who she was calling princess for a very long time, and she wanted to write their love story into this love story, and it was just all so adorable and I very much enjoyed it. It's queer and lovely and delightful, and the characters are just so great. This week I also finished Life as a Unicorn. This was also previously published as just Unicorn, and this one is a memoir of a queer Muslim drag artist who is non-binary. This is an unflinchingly honest account of this artist's life and the many questionable decisions that were made when it came to how they treated people and the whole concept of hurt people. Essentially their parents were not very accepting of them growing up very effeminate. They tried to squash any queer realization at any turn, and this developed into a lifetime of rebellion and hurt feelings and just a lot of things that this kid should not have had to go through and wouldn't have gone through if they had a supportive environment. This covers so many topics, from drag to intimacy to assaults to quantum physics at one point, and it really lays out the fact that this person is multifaceted, and I hope they're doing well right now. On to what I watched this week. Early this week I just wanted to kind of watch something and not really have to pay too much attention to it, and then I ended up getting really into this show. I watched the first 2 episodes of Dancing Queen. This is a Netflix show with only 1 season, starring Alyssa Edwards, or Justin Johnson if he's out of drag, who you might know from the RuPaul Drag Race franchise. He is actually from Texas, and he actually has a dance studio, and this is all about his life in drag, but then also his life at this dance studio and the various people who are at the dance studio, and him just having these elite teams he's putting together for the season. I used to be in dance classes when I was a kid. I was never this hardcore about it, but I can definitely relate to some of the things that are happening, and I really enjoy seeing these 2 different facets of this one person as he's just going through life, trying to go on some dates, buying a house, all of these types of things. I'm actually very much looking forward to continuing and seeing what else happens with these kids, because some of the dance moms have opinions, and that's just kind of fun to watch because it doesn't affect me. The other show I watched this week was the first 2 episodes of the 3rd season of Only Murders in the Building. The 2nd season left us off in a cliffhanger because it introduced a character played by a famous actor, and then we saw that that character passes on and we're like, okay, another murder mystery, let's go. In the first episode of this season, it also starts with this girl who went to theater back in the 1960s. I was just enthralled, and you could see her auditioning for these different things, but you never really saw her face except for when she was a very small child. And there was this one brief moment where we saw her just putting on lipstick and you could see kind of the jaw area of this woman, and I was like, I think that they have got a very major actress to be on this season, and I was absolutely correct as to who that was, so that was cool. Also, so far she was only in the first episode, but I know her character has to come back just based on what's happening, and she already did some really cool character work because this season is all around one of the characters putting on a show in a major theater on Broadway. And of course we know that I was a theater kid, I love all things theater, and speaking of that, this coming week there will be an announcement that you might be interested in if you also enjoy theater and books. As for the movie I watched this week, I have a feeling that a lot of people who are bookish and enjoy a certain book will have watched this movie this week because it finally came out. It was supposed to come out on the 1st and then it was postponed, I'm assuming because of the various strikes, and that was Red, White, and Royal Blue. Obviously, I'm a fan. Going into this adaptation, I didn't know much about it. I could tell by looking at the poster who was playing which character just because it was very obvious if you know the characters. And I knew about the casting of one other person, which is the person that plays the President of the United States. I didn't know about any other casting. I didn't know what they were going to be doing with certain plot lines or anything like that. And what I can say is they did a pretty good job of adapting this. It's not a one-to-one, it's never a one-to-one from book to movie. And the only big things that I noticed that were really like kind of smoothed over or changed slightly are the fact that Alex's parents are not divorced in this, and also his sister doesn't exist. Which, to be fair, although I would have really enjoyed the scenes between him and his sister and Nora, because I really enjoyed those in the book, I do completely understand for the brevity of turning this into a movie, just having the one character instead of 2 characters that he talks to about the things that he realizes he's feeling. I also have a feeling, and I would have to double check because I haven't read this in a few years, that the character of Miguel was created for the purposes of the plot of the movie, but again, that's because I haven't read it in about 4 years, so I would have to go back and double check, but I'm pretty sure Miguel was not a character, or at least not a character to the extent that he was in the movie. If somehow you've never heard of this book or never heard of this movie, this is a hate-to-love romance between the first son of the United States and a Prince of England. There's also a well-renowned British actor whose name came up early in the credits, and I went, yeah, I know exactly which character he will be playing, and of course I was correct. I thought that this was a wonderful adaptation. I loved seeing these certain scenes that I loved from the book on this big screen. I really enjoyed this adaptation. If you've seen it so far, let me know your thoughts down below because I thought it was done pretty well. On to the books I listened to this week, the first one being The Atlas Paradox. This is the second in this trilogy. I kept thinking it was just going to be a duology, and then as soon as I stopped talking about the first one, I remembered it is in fact a trilogy, so I now have to look into reading the 3rd book. What I like about this series as an audiobook is all of the different characters have their own voice actors. So we have all of these different perspective characters and they have their own voice actors, and I always really enjoy that. These are very long and complex and the timelines are kind of wishy-washy, especially in this one for very specific reasons. I don't want to wreck anything if you don't know anything about the series, and obviously being the 2nd book in the series, I don't really want to spoil anything for the 1st book. This book was just really easy to listen to and not pay attention too closely to certain details. Like, I would usually just let this play while I'm on my walks and maybe listen to it at a slightly higher speed because it was due back to the library soon and I wanted to make sure to finish it before it went back to the library. So there's probably a bunch of details that aren't super clear in my mind about what was going on, yet I still find myself really, really entertained. So I might have retained more of this if I was reading it on the page, but at the same time I definitely wouldn't have gotten through it as quickly as I'm able to on audio. And the parts where it gets overly technical might have bogged me down, whereas it's much easier to just to flow by them when somebody is reading the words to you. So if the audiobook is accessible to you, I definitely recommend it. that. The other audiobook I listened to this week is The Sleeping Car Porter. This is about a man named Baxter. That's actually his surname. I can't remember his first name at the moment, but he always refers to himself as Baxter. And he is a sleeping car porter back in the 1930s. He's been working as such for about 8 years. He's saving up to go to dental school because that's what he really wants to do. He wants to go through dental school and then have his own practice. And I knew a little bit about the lives of porters in Canada in the 1930s, but going through this book really puts you right in the middle of actually living that experience, right down to the fact that you are incredibly sleep deprived and your brain starts doing weird things to you and you're constantly worried about getting fired for things that aren't even your fault. And this was just a lot. It was very heavy, but it was also so very well done. Essentially, as a black man, there weren't many jobs you could get in Canada at this time, and this was like one of 2 of them, and it didn't pay very well. You weren't treated very well. If things went wrong, you had to pay for them. I feel like they weren't even paid very well. They mostly were paid in tips, and they were not allowed to sleep, and oh my goodness, just read this book, honestly. There were also certain things that I knew about that weren't explained in the book, and I kind of like that. For example, a lot of people just kept calling him George, even though that wasn't his name, and that's because one of the train companies is George Pullman's company, and they would just call all the porters George because people are racist pieces of shit, and I hate that. So essentially, if you want to know anything about being a porter in the 1930s, definitely read this book. Because there were points where I felt I was now sleep deprived, probably because I was listening to this first thing in the morning after just getting up and going on my morning walk, and I get up pretty early, and sometimes I haven't slept the best, so that helped with that experience. That's it for this week. If you've read, watched, or listened to any of these, let me know about it down in the comments below. On the way down to the comments, if you hit that subscribe button, that would be very nice of you. If you don't feel like leaving a comment but want to make sure that I know you were here, just leave me an emoji or a smiley face if you happen to be on your keyboard. Some people have asked if there's a way to financially support this channel, so I set up a Ko-fi account, which is a digital tipping service. The link for that, as always, is down below. You can like and share this as you see fit, and I will see you very soon. Bye!